meet with you guys. Danielle is the director of the Friends Provident Foundation in York. She serves on a number of boards and trusts, including being a non-executive director of the Civil Media Society, and she has a blue-chip philanthropy and social policy background. A bit like Alan's ambition, people asked Danielle if she was taking on an impossible and possibly ridiculous challenge. But what she's now going to tell us about her strategy, her approach, and using all their assets and results from an evaluation of the work and their struggles, what that will show us is that attempting to disrupt the status quo is a vital challenge for all foundations and philanthropists, no matter what their size or mission. Danielle.
Thank you, Sarah, and I'd like to thank Sarah and Alan and everyone else who's responsible for bringing me to this fantastic country. I have never been to Australia, and now that I've been to Australia, I've been to a tiny bit of Australia. And I feel like I have to say, well, I've not really been yet. I've got to come back. So thank you all very much. I absolutely have had a fantastic couple of weeks here in a camper van in the winter. So I'm a hard girl. I really have had a great time. I thought, as the last kind of non-Australian contributor, that I might share some of my observations from the last couple of days and the last couple of weeks I've been around. And when I first arrived in Australia, jet-lagged from Singapore, I met some of your members from New South Wales, and I just hopefully made sense because I had a couple of meetings. I have no idea what I said, but I really enjoyed meeting everyone. And what I wanted to say, first of all, from both those meetings and the conference here today, you are doing some world-class work here. There is world-class work going on in place-based interventions. There's some fascinating work going on in impact investing. There are amazing ideas. You just heard one today already happening. This is happening in Australia. And you are really doing some just things that need to be shared. The thing that makes it fascinating to me is that it's of a par that is going on in the US and in the UK where I live. But the one thing that makes it a huge advantage is that you are not insular. So in the UK, philanthropy quite often says, yeah, well, we've been around for 800 years, so we kind of know what we're doing. Debate, that's all I can say. And then in the US, I could say philanthropy has a tendency to say, not all of them, we're really big. We're really very big. So therefore, that's it. That's kind of it. We're good at this because we're big. And you know what? That's fine, but it isn't everything. And the one thing I'd say about what I've seen here is that there's such humility, openness, and a lack of insularity. You're looking out all the time, trying to build and build out. And that is something I hope you never lose. Though I can see your philanthropy is growing, hold on to that outward-facing interest. And I wondered if it's actually part of the geography of Australia. You are a big country, and you've got a lot to cover. And I think it actually gives you a sense of awareness of that. And I just really think it is a fantastic, fantastic advantage. So I'll move on to the other stuff I'm meant to be talking about, which is a bit about Friends Provident Foundation. And I think I've introduced myself, and this is what I'm meant to be talking about. We are a medium-sized foundation in Australian terms, small in UK terms, and minute in US terms. We don't exist, in fact, I think. And we hope to change the way we think about the economy. So most people would say, or as a friend of mine said, we're going to sort out capitalism. Sure, yeah, that's what we want to do. And that's what we're aiming to do. And so as I say, some of the things Alan was saying absolutely resonate with some of the things we want to do. So yeah, it looks kind of crazy, but in our view, this is the work we're in. Now, this is the flashy bit, because, oh, here, it's not going to work. Watch. Now, see, my design team said, you have to show this. This is it. Sorry, that's it. They made me bring this to Australia. That was it. That was it. That was all it was. You guys waited for that. That's what I made you guys. Sarah's big build-up was that. I thought I should put up our sort of general, oh, you probably can't even read that. That's really small. Anyway, it looked better on a smaller screen. But it's basically saying Friends Provident Foundation is an organization which came out of the demutualization of an asset manager and insurance company. It was demutualized in 2004. And they gave us 20 million pounds in shares, which is about, $36 million? I think it's something like that. And they gave it that. They gave us that. It was unclaimed by members who would have normally been able to claim them. And they said, OK, go off and do good stuff. We're going to go on with, listing ourselves on the stock exchange. I have to say, from 2004, they were bought, sold, and we're the last bit of anything called Friends Provident in the UK. I think they still operate internationally, but that's pretty much it. So we luckily sold all of our Friends Provident shares within 6 months and have a diversified portfolio in accordance with all good practice. So we're still around. So there you go. I have to say, before I go on, we carried on with our work. We were pretty much an independent grant-making trust. Because we came out of financial services, we had an interest in I guess how money and financial systems work together. So that was our fundamental issue. That's our heritage. We're really interested in how that works. So our first programs were around financial inclusion. Financial inclusion was a big issue in the UK in 2004 under the Labour government. And they kind of stole our fires, but we carried on, and we actually ended up being the largest funder of financial inclusion work outside government in the UK. We have one program, and we focus on that. In 2008, something funny happened to the rest of the world, obviously not here, which is actually quite interesting. Pretty much the bottom fell out of what looked like the bottom was going to fall out of the economy. And I think it recalibrated everybody's thinking about financial inclusion and the markets. I think there was a presumption in a program focused on financial inclusion that markets were kind of good things to hook poor people up to. All we needed to do was create good mechanisms to help poor people get access to all the good stuff that, like financial services, insurance, banking, affordable credit, etc. I think 2008, 2009 made everyone think, well, hang on, wait a minute, banks aren't actually working the way we thought they worked. They are not the unalloyed good that we thought was the way they were operating. And I think we had a massive rethink. And what we decided to do was to think about the economy. And we thought about the economy as a whole, to think about, in many of the ways that Alan was saying, why do we assume that the economy is like a kind of engine over there doing stuff, some of which are good, some of which are bad. And the bad stuff, it's the job of the state and philanthropy to sort out. So we spend a lot of money, our money, sorting out problems that are created by the economy. So we assume that inequality is just the way it works. It just happens. It just comes out of the economy, and we just go around redistributing, trying to sort it out and make it better. Okay, that's our assumption. We assume that the destruction of environmental goods and services is the kind of normal thing that happens from the economy and from markets. Is that the way it has to be? So what my trustees, some of which were world-class economists, said, well, actually, I think we need to rethink whether this is a necessary outcome of economic activity. And that's what we started off to do. And we kind of went off in our little grant-making way and started making grants. And I have to say, most people didn't know what we were talking about for a couple of rounds. They were like, well, I don't quite get that. But anyway, we carried on, and we actually built up a nice grants program. I think about 3 or 4 years after that, we sat down at a trustee away day, and we realized we had 3 fundamental insights, which I've had up there for a bit. One, there was urgency. This needed to be done now. We couldn't just allow this to carry on. Climate change, as Larry was talking about, climate change and the economy, what the economy is producing the climate change we just do not want to have. This is one of the outcomes of economic activity. We need to get sorting on some of these source issues quickly. So urgency was absolutely central to our rethink. Secondly, we are part of the system we want to change. We are in it. We are employers. We are asset owners. We are consumers. We are in the economy. We can't just stand as a foundation and go, hey, you over there, government, sort it out, or you economists, sort it out over there, or you individuals, you need to behave differently. We're in it. So we needed to rethink about the degree to which we were the kind of organization we needed to see in the new economy. If the economy could be recast, we needed to be demonstrating it. So that was quite important to us. And thirdly, we cannot do this alone. I mean, no matter what, we're pretty arrogant. We're not that arrogant. We know that it is impossible to sort out the economy on our own as a foundation. But it was also incredibly neglected as a topic. It was not being talked about in 2012. So we started rethinking kind of how we operated. And one of the things we looked at first as part of this was looking at ourselves. We looked at how we spent our own resources. So like many of you, we're a pretty standard foundation. So we've got some tools. Some of our tools are grants. We can make grants. We make grants, we do grants. We do that. We also did social investment. So we had social investments or impact investments. So those are direct investments in social enterprises and funds in pursuit of our mission. And we also had mainstream investment. We had assets that we were sitting on that were producing us an income. And we looked at how we spent our time. So we spent quite a lot of time on the grants, because that's actually fun. That's fun. Trustees like grants. And this is trustee time and staff time. So we had grants managers, and I spent some of my time on grants, and trustees spent their time on grants. We spent some of our time on social investments, because those are also quite fun and interesting and weird sometimes, because they're kind of bespoke. So we like those. And we also had spent some of our time, not very much, as you'll see from the graph, on our mainstream investment. We had outsourced, we have a fantastic we have asset managers, and they manage our assets for us. Trustees have regular meetings with them, so it's not, we're not, being remiss. But we actually realized if we looked at our time spent, and in relation to our assets, there was a massive mismatch. And we just thought, well, actually, we're not spending our time on the biggest chunk of our assets. We are spending our time on our marginal spend, because your grants are actually the excess cash from your assets. And so trustees said there's something fundamentally wrong about this. If we are serious about using all of our resources in pursuit of mission, if we're serious about it, we need to change something, and change some things quite radically. So going back to this whole idea, we're going to change the economy, but first we're going to start with us and change what we do. Because there's an insight that one of my trustees named Rob Lake, who is an ESG investment advisor, said, where you put your attention, where you put your time and your attention is where your consciousness is. So we needed to change that time and attention. And so we went about doing that. And we did 4 things. We changed our narrative. And I have to say, I don't know if anyone's read the book Sapiens? People read that? Oh, I love that book. It was so amazing. But one of the things about that was that it's a very long book, I have to say. But one of the things, his central ideas is that one of the things that makes us human, this particular kind of human, is that we have this amazing capacity for narrative, to tell a story, to tell stories to ourselves, to tell stories that we can share, to tell stories which can change the world. And in some ways, what Alan was talking about, we are telling ourselves a story about the economy every day. We know that. We know the economy is something we make up every day. When we pick out a dollar bill and we say, yeah, that's money. That's money. You give me a coffee, something I can drink and do things. That is a made-up thing. We're cooperating, and we made that idea up, and we all live in it. So we changed our own narrative about who we were, and we stopped talking about ourselves as being a grant maker. That was a fundamental. We no longer call ourselves a grant maker. We call ourselves a capitalized charity, because we wanted to look at how we spend all of our capital was what we actually wanted to evaluate ourselves on, not on our marginal spend. Why would you do that? We are not just making grants. We are doing a lot of other stuff as well, even if we're not paying attention to it. So what our money is doing in the world, it doesn't require us to pay attention to, but it's doing something, and we are responsible for it. So first of all, we changed the narrative. The second thing we did, and this relates to some of the other discussion today about the nature of investment, we became an engaged investor. So we found out what was in our portfolio, and we find out every quarter, and we talk to our investment managers, which I have to say they pretty much hate, because it's really irritating to have an asset owner going, so, what's that? I don't know what that is. Can you tell me what that is? Why did you buy that? Or why did you sell that? And we're just talking to them about it. And that's irritating enough. And then we decided to actually use a bit of our money to buy shares in particular kinds of companies. In this case, we're actually taking a leaders and laggards approach. So because we're particularly interested in energy and the community and the degree to which that's contributing to a whole variety of aspects of economic activity. We're interested in utility companies and the degree to which they are operating in a way which is consistent with keeping us to 1.5 degree increase. And so we started buying shares in companies that were particularly good at thinking about transition plans. And we're planning to go to their AGMs and ask questions about the degree to which they are integrating their transition plans into their business models. And we're also buying shares in laggards, people who are not talking about those issues. And we're really interested in the degree to which they are operating in an effective way. And so we are now becoming an AGM pain in the backside, because that is our objective. We are investors. We have a tiny bit. You only need one share to go to an AGM in the UK. So, we're working on that side. We're also working with others, other foundations, as well as other concerned investors. So we've created a new role in our organization, and we are carrying on doing that. We are becoming an engaged investor. We also developed a communication function. We didn't have one before because we were a grant maker. That's what we did. We didn't talk about it. We just gave grants. But now we actually realize the importance of narrative both to ourselves and also to the world. We needed to share this information. So that's why we have a design team that creates those little funny things, because we actually decided it is important to be able to share a vision, to develop and share a vision, and also offer an opportunity for our grant holders and and people we invest in and people we work with who don't have a comms function to have their story told. So we feel we're part of that. We're adding a service to what we do. And the next thing is that we actually commissioned an evaluation. We're evaluating ourselves. We're looking at the degree to which we are operating effectively, not our grant program. And this is quite important. We're not looking at are you delivering objectives? No, we're looking at, are we doing what we are setting out to do and the degree to which we're effective at doing that? And that's been a really important little journey for us. So I've got my 10-minute warning. This has had an effect on how we spend our time now. Our time is now more evenly split between on our asset side as well as on our grant side. So this is trustee time and staff time. We actually have reconfigured that. Slightly less on the social investments because there's a whole range of other stuff going on in there. Our money is still pretty much the same because, you have a corpus, you got a corpus. But we have really changed the way we're putting our attention. And where we're putting our attention is actually really important to us. And I'll just show you this one. This is one my comms team has not got hold of yet. I'm sorry about it because it's a little bit crude. But this is really the way we think about ourselves. We have communicating and convening. We have grants. We have our endowment. And these things are connected. So there's a lot of integration between functions. So the comms side is talking to the investment engagement side. And they're actually putting together reports and activities together. The grant side and the comms side, which is obviously a much more easily done side, and the grants and the investment engagement side are also working together to catalyze new ideas. So we're doing all of that. And the other thing we did was, I mentioned our evaluation, and when I met with the family tour, we had just commissioned our evaluation, I think, or we're just about to. And I just thought I'd share the lessons from our evaluation, just a few of them. There are actually quite a lot of them. One, so grant holders love us. They think we're great, which is like not a finding. But I thought it was quite funny because they always say, oh, you're doing such a good job. It's like, yes, because we funded you. But anyway, it was still nice to hear. You got to acknowledge, it's nice to hear that people think you're good. The other thing, though, is that our evaluation techniques, methodology, identified a really interesting thing. They have bellwethers. I don't know if you've ever heard those. So they ask people who are not funded by us, people who are experts, so senior academics. They talk to economists in general. And they were saying, funny, they're not doing anything on this big economic issue. Like, I'll just say the word now. It's the only time I'm mentioning it, Brexit. We're not doing Brexit work. This is a big economic issue. Because it's so complicated, and to be honest, you can't tell what the hell's going on, we're not doing work on Brexit. But it is true, it is missing from our little collection of things we're doing, and we need to take account of Brexit and the insecurity that it's bringing to the British economy, and the global economy, and the European economy. We're also not doing much on housing, which they also said, you're just not doing anything on housing. Housing is one of the most dysfunctional markets in the UK you could possibly imagine. The third thing it found is that we're really good at ideas. We're good at ideas, and we're less good at scaling practice. That's because ideas are cheap. They're relatively cheap. But if you actually want to scale something up, it's actually more expensive. And as a medium-sized organization, we realize that bit is hard. But we're actually thinking about how we can do that, again, with collaboration. And we have a very complex model. We have a complex model of change. And to be honest, that's not surprising if you're trying to change the economy. So we need to do this with other people, as we know. And we are now developing a new strategy, which is about, now this is my thing. I'm told this is being recorded, but I'm still going to say it anyway. We call this our strategy for accomplishing our mission using other people's money, which is kind of collaboration, but it's actually encouraging everybody to fund what we fund and to get involved. Everybody does it. Larry did it, didn't he? He was saying, you guys could all come and be, work on climate. It's accomplishing your mission through other people's money. And I think that's it's really important to be thinking very carefully about what you're doing. And we need to do that. We need to engage with other philanthropists and other organizations, and we are in the process of doing that. So, that is a quick canter through who we are. Now, I wanted to come back, and I know I'm running out of time. I wanted to say, I think this has been a fascinating conference, and it's been an interesting conference because of the topic. And I feel it's really important. Oops, I've gone too far. I feel it's important for me to stand here and hold a mirror to you, going back to the whole purpose of the conference. And I wanted to ask some questions. I can't answer the question, is purpose enough? I can't answer that for you. That's an individual question. And going back to the Aristotle quote from the very beginning, reflection is the point. So I'm going to give you some reflection points from my perspective, the things that we have gone through from our strategy development. I think, first of all, there are 4 things. 1, who are you? Think about who you are. Where do you come from? What is your narrative? Where is your passion? Why are you here? Why are you doing it? Think about it. Don't get caught up in all your technicalities because you've got a grants program. No, why? Why is your organization and you as a person, why are you here today? This is a central first question, and it is a powerful question. Secondly, what are the tools you've got? What are your constraints? What are the tools? Know your tools and use them. Thirdly, where do you spend your time? Think about your time. How are you spending your time? Where are you putting your attention? Are you spending the time where you feel you should, particularly as it relates to your assets, your tools and your gifts and your assets? Think about your time. And 4, think about where is your power. Think about what you can do. What are you good at? What can you do? What is it you can contribute? Can you convene? Do you sit in a particular place? Do you have particular knowledge? Think about your power. Think about how you use it, how you distribute it, how you share it. Think about it. Your power is key. Now, I wanted to leave you because Sarah's inspired me with all of her quotes from an amazing array of people. I wanted to leave you with an African proverb you've probably heard before, but I found really powerful in terms of the collaboration that I feel is necessary for good philanthropy. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go well, go together. Thank you. Am I saying? Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We do have time for a couple of questions. So we have some roving mics. And again, you know the drill. Quick introduction, short and snappy question. Any questions? Thank you, Carol. Wave at me if you've got them and we'll line you up.
Hi, Carol Short.
We have the roving mic on.
Is that on? Yep. Thank you, that was terrific. I want to know about your effectiveness as an AGM activist. Have you been doing that for long, and how effective is it?
We haven't been doing it for that long. We've done it once, and to be honest, it is one of the most empowering and exciting things to do. To stand up and just say, excuse me, and I mean, your questions are submitted in advance, and just ask a question that, to be honest, they should be able to answer, but quite often they can't. It is a powerful activity, and now success is difficult, I think, to assess, in that you have a conversation. Corporate activity is difficult to tell what's going on inside under the hood. So the question gets asked. Sometimes there's a little meeting that happens afterwards. What we are doing, though, is working with an organization in the UK that operates internationally. I'm not sure they operate in Australia, called Share Action. And they used to be called Fair Pensions, and they are very much on the shareholder activism side. And they have what they call an AGM army, a bunch of volunteers who go along to AGMs to ask questions of Shell, of a whole range of organizations, and we work really closely with them. And they do a lot of the follow-up, and they are absolutely fantastic.
Any other questions? Sal here in the middle. Thanks, Sal.
Hi, Sally McCutcheon from Impact Investing Australia, so the title probably says it all. I'm actually interested, when you were talking about your investment portfolio, you talked about the shareholder advocacy piece and activism piece. Can you talk about, in terms of things like ESG screening, or just the sort of investments that you're making to avoid harm, and whether you think, I don't know if you're aware of the Impact Management Project, which is a mapping tool, whether you're thinking about mapping to that kind of framework of avoid harm, benefit, contribute to society.
I'm so in love with that. I've just heard about that project recently, and I just think it's just incredibly, it's bridges, isn't it? Is it bridges that have, and a bunch, yeah. It's just a really fascinating map. I would recommend looking it up. If we can probably distribute the web address, it's really, really good. And we are looking at actually mapping our portfolio onto that. I think our portfolio, which has been invested, ESG screened, pretty vanilla, though theoretically deep green, kind of, that's a kind of mixed metaphor. Anyway, it is a pretty straightforward ESG screened fund. We've never been in fossil fuels, for instance, and in some ways, some of the discussion about divestment is that we can't really have a conversation very much about divestment because we're never been in. So that is a disadvantage. But it is a do no harm type of just pretty standard. But we are trying to redress that and think about how we could be a little bit more proactive. And we are invested in an organization, a new fund called Snowball, which is trying to aggregate both mainstream investments as well as social investments in the same portfolio to really move the dial on moving our portfolio and many other portfolios much more toward the actually having a positive impact in the economy. And that's what we're experimenting with. We've got about £3 million in that. Yeah, it's in early stages.
We're out of time, Danielle.
Okay.
Please join me in thanking Danielle.
Aww.